Welcome everyone to today's webinar focusing on reducing error in the workplace. I'm Kayla and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, and our speaker today is Alan Hester, President of Nividus. Before we begin, I just want to go over some quick guidelines. So if you find difficulty with the audio or video, please just use the chat window on the side of the control panel. You can also use the question window, which is a separate window, to share your questions related to the webinar itself. And please raise those questions whenever you feel like it, and we're going to spend some time at the end of the session addressing them. And if we don't get the chance, we'll get back to you via email. We'll also send out a recording of this session, and the same recording will be available on our website. So I want to open today's session with a brief intro of Nividus. So our aim is to help businesses work at their peak efficiency and succeed with their digital transformation goals with our intelligent automation platform. We offer vertical solutions to help empower companies operate with agility and flexibility. And one of our key differentiators of our platform is that RPA, AI, and BPM capabilities are natively developed within the platform. This key differentiator has enabled us to help our customers meet their end-to-end automation needs. I'm now going to hand it over to our speaker, Alan.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. Appreciate you all joining us today to talk about human error in the workplace. I think this is a topic that should resonate with most of you. If you're in a business that's dealing with people sometimes make mistakes. They don't plan to make mistakes, but sometimes just things happen, right? When you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're working with a lot of numbers and in spreadsheets or even in printed form, and you're trying to copy things from column to column, cell to cell. You know, when you first start out and you're feeling fresh, you probably do a great job, but over time, some things can start to slip, and there are all kinds of different things that can get in the way of people being able to do the same task the same way over time. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, how as a company you can get past that challenge and find ways to be able to do these kinds of tasks reliably without having to deal with the negative ramifications of the human errors. You can see there that Gartner number, 12.9 million in 2021, that they say the poor data cost is. And I'd say there's actually more to this than just poor data. I think there are many other challenges that arise related to human errors that get introduced into your processes. It often is poor data, but it also could be a poor customer service experience, right? If someone is on the phone and gives a customer the wrong answer or leads them in the wrong direction, or even sometimes a vendor or a partner, you know, those are the kinds of things that can have a lasting impact to your business, and they might not be as easily quantifiable, but still they are important things. So what we're going to talk about today as a potential solution to these problems with human errors is intelligent automation in general. And I think a lot of times when we bring up automation or intelligent automation, everyone's mind goes directly to RPA. Well, I say everyone, but probably not everyone. But many people who are involved in technology and have heard of RPA, they think of RPA when they're thinking about automation. But I just want to make it clear here, when we talk about intelligent automation, we're not talking about just RPA. There are a lot of RPA solutions out there, and RPA certainly has its place. It's very good at being able to automate simple, discrete tasks. But when we talk about intelligent automation, we're talking about automating complete end-to-end business processes that have both simple steps and maybe complicated steps. And these could be processes that are short. Maybe it's just three different steps by one person, or it could be 150 steps that are done by 30 different people. And maybe some of those are automatable. Maybe some of them could be done by a bot using RPA. But in most cases, there are still going to be the need for tasks that have to be done by humans. And so what we have found is with intelligent automation, when you can build the human components into the solution and keep the human resources that you have in your company focused on the things that they do best and away from that repetitive, mundane work that you can have automated, not only do you reduce the human errors that are introduced, but you also are going to get more productivity out of both sides of the equation. The bot's going to do the same amount of work or more work faster and more reliably than the human would do. But the work that the human is doing, they're going to get that done faster too, because it's more engaging work, right? And it's simplified and streamlined to leverage their unique abilities that they bring to the table. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go into this, but I just wanted to set the stage for what we mean when we say intelligent automation. It's not just RPA, it's the combination of RPA and other technologies like workflow technology, like business process management, as well as a lot of different artificial intelligence components. And the artificial intelligence comes into the mix because it enables you to automate much more complicated processes than you would be able to automate without it. Okay, so we kind of already talked about this, how intelligent automation reduces human errors by taking those repetitive, mundane tasks off of people's plate, putting it in the hand of bots that are going to do that work the same way every time, right? They're gonna, if they're doing the same task over and over again, a million different times in a day, they're not going to get bored. They're gonna do it, and it's gonna take them the same amount of time to do it, and they're gonna do it with the same precision for the 1 millionth task versus the first task. Bots, obviously there still are chances that you could have errors when you're using bots, but the errors won't come from the bot. The errors will only come into the mix if there's bad data coming in or somehow something gets corrupted in the handoffs of the different pieces of the process. But the bot itself is never really going to make a mistake. So now let's go into this concept of validation, which when you have people doing work, many times, if it's an important task, you may have someone check their work, right? If you're talking about a document you create, maybe some person writes it and then another person will do the proofreading and editing. And a lot of tasks are like that, where someone or maybe various people will put together pieces of it, and then someone else will check it just to be sure that everything is right before it goes to whatever that next step is, to either present it to a customer or present something to the CEO of the company or whatever the thing is that you're trying to get done. The problem is with doing it that way, not only do you then have all the manual work that has to be done with creating the thing to begin with, but then you have to add into the mix the fact that it takes additional human effort to do the checking. And so when you bring automation to the table, you can have this concept of validation, right? Where you can have rules that are set up that say, for this particular value that we're looking at, we know it's always going to follow these kinds of rules. And if it doesn't follow those rules, then maybe someone needs to check it, right? And so there's only going to be a certain number of things that will be flagged by these kinds of validations. And if you want to, you can set up your process, because we talked about the importance of having humans as part of the work process doing the things that they do best, if you want to still have a human doing that final checking, in this kind of scenario, they're only going to check those things that are questionable from the standpoint of what the system is able to check. So if you have the validation rules in place and something doesn't look right, you can flag that and say, hey, I want a person to take a look at this before we go forward. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds there, in that the drudgery parts of it are done automatically, but you still get the intelligence of a person to make the final call of whether or not something should go forward. So one of the net side effects of this kind of automation is that not only are you going to give much better final results and reduce the amount of human error that takes place, but all of the time savings that you get from those people that were involved doing those repetitive tasks, that's all going to be time that's freed up to do higher level tasks, right? That only they can do. And a common area where this gets used by many companies is innovation, right? When we think about our companies and our competition that we face within our industry, I'd say most companies are trying to do their best to keep up with what the competition is doing and maybe have a little bit of an edge, so that you can be comfortable that what you're offering to your competitor or to your customers is competitive with what your competitors are offering, right? So that you can continue to do a lot of business and continue to make money, right? That's the whole point of your business. And so by allowing humans to have more time because of the automation work that is put in place, that creates this space for being able to innovate that so many companies say they don't currently have time for. And so I know that this can be a big challenge and has been a big challenge within a lot of companies, even when they have this as a stated goal. And this is a good way to free up that time, not just for that, but for other things as well. Okay, so let's move forward and let's talk about a few case studies here where you can see how this has worked in some different companies, different kinds of companies in different industries, and the amount of manual effort that has been removed, and also the amount of human error that has been removed. And let me just interject here and say, as Kayla said at the beginning, if you have any questions at any point, you can type those into the window on your screen, and we'll try to be sure that we get to those specific questions before we're done. Okay, so let's first look at this case study about an automotive company. And this was a case where there's a huge number of documents being handled related to this bonus claims process. So essentially, they had this set up between the automaker and the dealership, where if certain criteria was met, they would get this bonus or this incentive back. But they had to make sure that they had all of the right elements and all of the right paperwork captured. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get the money when the time came. And so there was a lot of cross-checking and verification, validations, as we talked about before. And by implementing this solution, you could see there that there was a 90% elimination of manual effort and a greater than 95% improvement in turnaround time for this particular case. Let's look at another one. This one has to do with loan processing. And this was kind of a different situation where you had a company that was dealing with a legacy system, which was built many years ago. And the company was struggling to find a way to, as we talked about earlier, they were in a situation where, you know, they're competing with all these fintechs now, and they were trying to find a way that they could innovate their processes and systems, but they were dependent on this old legacy application that was created many years ago, and they didn't really have many staff. Even though they had a big IT department, they didn't have many staff left who knew how this legacy system worked. So when they were trying to build around that, it was very difficult for them to get anything done. And even what they could get done, the progress was very, very slow because it was relying on a very small resource pool that had the knowledge to do this kind of work. And so this is one of the other advantages to intelligent automation solutions using the Nivitas platform, is that if you have these kinds of legacy systems or even modern systems that don't have the APIs that you need to do the kinds of integrations with other systems that you're looking for or you need, then this kind of platform can open up a whole lot of new possibilities for that, because that integration doesn't have to be done through the API. That integration can be done through the user interface using RPA, and then also through the data layer itself in some cases. So most importantly, or usually, data type solutions are where this is most prevalent, where you're trying to get data from multiple systems together so that you can report on it holistically, because that's what will give you the best picture of how to run your business. And so this was the kind of case that we were faced with here. And you could see the kind of improvements that were made in this case in terms of man hours saved, reduction in turnaround time again, and also faster resolution time of complaints. Here's one where we're going to look at an insurance company, and this one was really an identity verification system. So there was a need in this case for a know your customer type verification, that who was being represented as the new account holder was who they say they are. So we had to do this process of being able to verify the photo taken of the live customer matches that in their ID, and just to make that connection that they are who they say they are. And by automating this process, it was able to save 75% of the total time of the end-to-end process just by automating this piece of it, which gave a 90% improvement in the accuracy and a 60% reduction in the amount of people's time that it would take to finish this process. Okay, here is one from a logistics company. And this is a case where we had a lot of different people involved in this process of being able to assign these cases related to shipment verifications and validations. And it's kind of a thing that on the surface seems like it has to be a manual process, because there's so many different data sources involved. There's so many different things that have to be looked up. But we were able to put in place a solution that did exactly what we talked about earlier, where it could leverage the best of both worlds in terms of automating the pieces that could be done automatically, but keeping the other important pieces in the hands of the humans, so that things don't break and errors aren't introduced. So you could see in this case, it was an 80% reduction in the amount of human work, which means that 20% of the time that what it took from the beginning, before we changed anything, was still spent by people, right? So that's one of the myths with these kind of solutions, is that you're not always looking for something where everything can be automated, right? It's great if you have a situation where it can be straight through automation, that a human doesn't ever have to touch it, but that doesn't always happen. And that doesn't mean that an automation is not worth doing if you can't have that complete automation. So in this case, we still saved 890 hours per month and a 60% reduction in turnaround time. So obviously it depends on your business, what is going to make sense and whether or not that kind of solution will work in a particular use case. But it's certainly worth noting that you don't have to have complete end-to-end automation for a project like this to be successful. There are a lot of in-between things that could still justify the expense of implementing this kind of solution. Because that's the other part of this that not everyone always realizes, is that implementing this kind of solution in general is much faster and less expensive than a typical IT project. So not just from a amount of time that it takes to develop and therefore the cost of the development itself, but also the platforms themselves are fairly inexpensive in comparison to the value that they deliver to your company. Okay, this is a case for accounts payable for a beverage company, and this one is really about invoice processing. So this is one, we have a number of solutions prepared where in a particular space, most companies do things the same way. And invoice processing is one of those solutions where we have built a pretty good solution framework that is most of the way there for any particular company that's looking to implement invoice processing and even more broadly AP automation. So what we have is we have a portal that allows vendors to submit their invoices directly through the portal and get an idea of where everything stands so that they have the ability to log in at any time and they can see everything that they have open and where it is in the process. And then obviously the company that has implemented this has the ability to see that for all of the different vendors. This doesn't mean though that through the portal is the only method for receiving these kinds of invoices, because as you know, you often don't have any control over how you receive the invoices or what they look like. So the two important pieces of this solution are that the model is already built. So we have a pretty comprehensive machine learning model that we have created for being able to handle invoices in general. And so most invoices, depending on the kinds of fields that you're looking to get out of it, most of those cases you could use our inbuilt machine learning model for processing invoices. If that does not work though, you also have the ability to create your own custom model. And that's something that, even though it might sound complicated, it's actually very easy to do and can be done very quickly. So the other parts of this process that we have in place are being able to route things for approvals and doing two-way and three-way matching if you have this tied into some other systems that can also bring in like the packing slips or shipping information to compare that against and against the POs. So there are a lot of different levels that you could go to in automating a solution like this. And the great thing is that this will really work in any of those levels. If you're looking for something quick and easy, where you just, you have invoices, you want to get them processed and paid as quickly as possible, and want to make sure that you're paying for what you think you're paying for, to do a simple solution like that can be fast and easy. If you need something more complicated that's interfacing with SAP or other systems, you can do that too. And fundamentally, it's all going to work the same way. So let me move forward now to the next one. This one is looking through a bunch of different documents in an insurance company. And this is a process that was very time consuming, and it had an impact on customer satisfaction, because this really was about being able to come up with custom quotes for new insurance customers that were looking for something that would be custom to their business. So essentially, they had to go in and enter some parameters. Initially, it was all done via phone call, and they would call up an agent. They would give them some parameters. That agent then would have to go away, work with all these different spreadsheets and actuarial tables, all this different stuff that they had to look up manually in order to provide them with a quote. And we were able to put in place a solution that was able to do that all very quickly, automatically, so that initially we put it in place so that the agent could give them an answer on the phone, but then we ended up building it into an online portal as well, which allowed them to not just provide those fast results, but it kind of turned it into a whole new business offering for them, where then they could make that interaction available to their brokers as well, and there's no additional lift associated with doing it. So those are, at a high level, some different case studies where we talked about the kind of advantages that intelligent automation can bring in terms of reducing human error, freeing up people's time, and also making sure that that your end-to-end processes can be automated rather than just specific tasks. So the last thing I'm going to bring up here is something that we call the quick start. And this is designed for companies that already feel like they have a need to do this kind of project, but for some reason are a little bit cautious, or maybe even skeptical. You know, maybe you hear these things that I'm saying and you think, well, you know, I hear what he's saying and it works for some of those businesses like that, but that won't work for us. Or for, you know, I can't afford to take that risk that something like that would work for us or not. So we have the opportunity for you to try technology like this in a completely risk-free way. And so sometimes this happens, like I said, when you're just starting out, or sometimes you've already started and you've had a bad experience and you think, well, you know what, I'm not doing that again. And so we give you this quick start where we will get something up and running for you in production. This isn't a POC, this isn't a pilot or prototype. This is something that will be running in production that can do your work. You don't actually pay for anything until you have time to evaluate that it's delivering the value to your company or not. So at that point, when you see that you're going to have the ROI, that's when we will invoice you, and not until that point. So this gives you a very risk-free way to explore what this kind of technology can do for you and your business. So that is really all we had to talk about today. And unfortunately, we don't really have much time to cover any questions. So I think we will leave it at that. And if you do have any additional follow-up or questions that we don't get back to you via email, just feel free to reach out to us and let us know. And we're happy to set up either a custom demo for you or talk through what your particular use case is in your company, so that we could figure out how you can make intelligent automation work for you. Kayla, finish this out.
Well, thank you, Alan. Yes, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We also have more interesting webinars lined up, and you can visit our website, .com, to get the update. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.